Hi, It's Fit Maddie Wilson. Welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, hi, hello, I'm Maddie. I've lost 100 pounds. I like to talk about weight loss, PCOS, stuff like that. So if you like that, make sure to subscribe down below. Today I have a guest with me and we are here to debunk some Instagram trends, fitness trends, fad diets, all stuff nutrition based, but you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Emma. I'm a dietetic technician and personal trainer. I work with people who have eating disorders, and I'm also in school to get a master's in nutrition as well as exercise physiology. My goal is to prevent eating disorders in athletes and debunk a lot of diet myths that are out there causing harm.
Queen, this is so amazing. Like, I am so glad we ran into each other and we started talking about this because most of you guys know I've had a past with eating disorders. I put myself into treatment when I was 18, inpatient treatment, and man, I learned a lot. And like, I really at the time like hated the people that worked there, but that's more of like a
that means we're doing our jobs
exactly
right? Yeah.
And so like the fact that you do that every day, like, I don't know, it's just so amazing to me. So I asked you, of course, I asked you all over on Instagram to ask her some questions. So we actually have 5 different questions we're gonna go over. The first one is fad diets, and I got a lot to say about this, but you are the expert, so I'm gonna let you say some stuff. I did some research on fad diets, and I found like fad diets can cause like a lot of health problems, and I wanted to talk about like the health problems before we got into your questions. So I found dehydration, weakness and fatigue, nausea, headaches, constipation, and mineral intake. So talk to me, why does this happen with fad diets?
So there's a number of factors that go into this. Fad diets vary from diet to diet, from person to person, on how they're going to affect you. So with fad diets, the primary reason they have such a negative impact on our health is a lot of them, especially things like detox diets, which we will get into later, function similarly to laxatives. So that's a lot of dehydration, that's a lot of cramping, that's a lot of nausea, all things that can cause a lot of harm to your body, not to mention various damage it can have on your various digestive organs. Other fad diets are just very minimally researched, and there isn't a whole lot of science or studies to back up the effectiveness, not to mention the safety behind them.
Yeah.
So most physicians don't even know all the fad diets that exist out there. You know, I'm finding new ones every day that I've never heard of, and some of them are absolutely ridiculous and have no scientific basis whatsoever.
Yeah, because like we can talk about like the popular ones, we'll get into that, but going back to like detox teas, like when I was very, very desperate, I've actually done a video about that, so the card will be up in the corner. When I was at a low point in my life, like I thought that detox teas would help me and save me. Like their marketing is so just like, you have to do this to lose weight, and I was just like, okay, like easy fix. And like I feel like I didn't know the risks of that, and like I want more people to understand that like it's not just an easy fix. Like you're causing harm to your body, and like let's put a stop to it.
And the really sad thing about fad diets is most of the people out there looking to find a diet that will work for them are interested in leading a healthy and happy life, and fad diets do the exact opposite of that. So that's a big issue I have with the diet industry, is there are certain ones out there that take advantage of people just trying to make themselves as happy and healthy as can be. And our definition of health, if fad diets is what goes along with that, is kind of skewed in my opinion. So I think we could do a lot to correct that.
Let's actually get into our first question over on Instagram. We have right here, why are they so popular and easily believed?
So the human condition desires straight answers, solutions, fixes, to the point that if we don't have a problem to fix, we usually make our own. You can look that up, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And
sorry, Nick, that's my boyfriend.
And science can be so complex, the human body is so complex, that for the general population to understand a lot of nutrition facts or topics, people tend to oversimplify them. So people out there who claim to be nutrition experts will read an actual study, take the conclusion, and confine it to, you know, X equals Y rather than X is correlated to Y, but may not cause it.
Yeah.
And people tend to run with that and believe it, and before you know it, it's a ripple effect, and that idea has spread. And while the original idea may be based in science, taken out of context, it's just not. And it can cause a lot of harm.
And that's even with like vitamin C. Like so long ago we thought that like vitamin C like would cure the common cold, and like I just got over being sick, and vitamin C doesn't cure the common cold, and like we still believe that, and we still are pushed to, even when we're sick, like, oh, just drink some orange juice and that will like cure everything. And like we've gone so far past that. Like, why do people still believe these things? And like to me, it's like I see it more off of like social media and like huge influencers like pushing like, this is how I lost weight, and like this is like, you know, I do this diet and this diet, and like to me that's why it's so easy to believe, because I like used to look up to those people.
Yeah.
You know,
if you think of it kind of like a chain effect, I mean, you have the scientists and researchers up here discovering all these new things about nutrition. It's constantly evolving. We're constantly learning new things. They have to publish it in a paper. The paper goes into a journal. Physicians, other dietitians, and health professionals read that, and then eventually it trickles down to the public. But there's this gap between the health professionals and people who claim to be experts on social media transcribing that information in a way that can be really detrimental.
Yeah.
So that's where the big hole is that I would love to see.
Yeah, and like that's why, real quick before we get any further, like I like to say in every one of my videos that I am not a professional. Like, this is just my story, like how I lost weight, like how I overcame my eating disorder, how I deal with PCOS is like all of my story. We're here with a professional today, but that doesn't mean that like all of your questions are going to be answered, and it may not apply to you. But just want to get that little like disclaimer out.
That's a very good point.
Real quick. And I feel like if we had that more on social media, like I am not a doctor, like in the front, like I don't know how it says like #ad, like don't listen to me because I don't know what I'm talking about. I just took money. Anyways, we could talk about that for a long time, but let's move on to the second question on Instagram. This one is about fad diets as well. This is the dangers of going on and off diets.
So the dangers of going on and off diets, another term for that is yo-yo dieting, which means that you go on a diet for a certain period of time, you lose a bunch of weight, you go off and you gain it all back. And that's the really common story with any diet, unless it's a sustainable diet that you can use throughout your lifetime, which is primarily intuitive eating, which we will get more into later. One of the primary issues I see in yo-yo dieting is that it tends to encourage binge eating disorder behavior or binge eating behavior. And binge eating disorder is actually a restrictive disorder where you don't allow yourself to eat for long extended periods of time, and then you tend to eat a lot in a short period of time, and it can be very detrimental.
With that, I've talked about, like, I've had bulimia, anorexia, binge eating, like I've had a lot of different eating disorders, and like I didn't think like I was in control. And so like I would try to restrict, and then it'd be like, I'm just gonna have an apple, and then 20 minutes later I ate a whole pizza, and like I didn't know, you know, like I don't feel like I was aware of my body. And like binge eating to me is this like this urge that like I couldn't control at the time, and like that's so dangerous. And like that led me into, you know, more like purging and other side effects with that. And like you could just go down a rabbit hole of yo-yo dieting. And like my experience from my mom, she was always overweight growing up, and so it was always like, okay, no fat everything, you know, like in the late, you know, early 2000s, late 90s, it was just like, you know, no fat anything. And then it went to like slim fast, like meal replacement shakes. And like seeing her like mental health and seeing her like function of yo-yo dieting, I'm like, that's not my mom. Like she can't even stay awake. Like, you know, it's, I just feel like there's so many dangers, like mental health wise and inside wise.
Well, no, I think you hit the nail on the head with the mental health impacts of any kind of disordered relationship with food, especially with binge eating. disorder, we tend to criminalize binge eating disorder more so than we do things like obviously restrictive disorders, at least in our society, and that comes down to our own issues with body size and things like that when it comes to the way our culture functions. So the biggest, I think, in my opinion, the biggest negative health outcome of yo-yo dieting and binge eating is more so psychological in terms of it just promotes anxiety and feelings of self-worth and all the things that come along with eating disorders, and the list goes on for so long. I would like to say that there are physiological effects that can occur, but that is definitely something to discuss with your physician or a dietitian, because it's going to vary from person to person.
Yeah, that, and same with eating disorders, like it varies person to person. Like when I was in treatment, like everyone had their own story, you know, and so don't go often on diets. That's the moral of this. Let's move on to the last question in our fad diet discussion. That is opinions on shake diets.
So I have a few opinions on shake diets.
Let's hear them.
So replacing any kind of meal with a liquid is probably not the best idea. There's a lot of benefits to getting foods through whole, actual ingredients. Our bodies are better able to absorb the vitamins and minerals and micronutrients that are in those foods. Not to mention they're easily digested. When we are constantly drinking shakes, our body has a hard time absorbing some of those nutrients, and additionally most of those shakes are super high in protein. Most of us don't need that much protein, and it can actually lead to things like constipation, and then when we stop drinking them, our body gets really confused and we feel really tired.
So I made myself like a protein shake, and to me, like, I use that as a meal replacement, but like I was sick, and to me that was like I still gave my body something. You know, like I was hungry, but I wasn't about to make myself like eggs and like all the other foods. So like I had, to me, protein, and I had a banana, so that's like some carbs and some sugars, and like I felt satisfied from it. But if I were to drink only shakes for that whole day, like
you wouldn't get everything your body needs.
Exactly.
But what you just described is intuitive eating. I mean, you knew what your body was capable of having in that moment, and you gave it to yourself, and you felt satiated.
I felt good. I felt really good, and then got some pho after.
There you go.
That was good. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Really quick though, one of the biggest issues I do see with shake diets is people will use like one product, and that's it. That product plus water, and that's it. That's not enough. If you're making smoothies, that's a little bit different. Again, you don't want to be doing that for 3 meals a day, but if you have like a smoothie bowl with some granola or something in the morning, by all means do that. That's great. Like throw in a banana, throw in some peanut butter. That's fine.
It's so good too. I know I talk about it on Instagram all the time, but it tastes like a milkshake, and it's like so satisfying, and like
I have some good smoothie recipes too.
Go check out your Instagram. We'll put a little picture right here, and I'll have a link down below. Like, must I say food porn? Like, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Of course. Let's actually get into the second part of this video, which I asked over on Instagram, what topics of nutrition confuse you? And so I asked all of you guys that, and we have some good ones to talk about. So the first one is reading nutrition labels and understanding more just calories per serving. So let's go into that.
That's a really good question. I'm really glad that someone asked that. So calories in and of themselves are not really enough to understand the contents of a certain food. There's about a 20% error margin with the calories you see on most nutrition labels. So
it blows my mind.
They're not entirely accurate. Another really important part to remember is calories are just a measurement of energy. So like in a science class, if you were to conduct a chemical reaction, the energy that's released during that chemical reaction is usually measured in joules, which can be converted to calories. So it's literally just energy. What you want to focus on is where that energy is coming from. So what you'll also see on the nutrition label is the different nutrients on one side. So you have things like fats, sugars, carbohydrates. Usually the sugars are under the carbohydrates, and next to them, the amount of calories that you're getting from each of those macronutrients. Something that they've started doing, at least on certain food products, is sharing underneath carbohydrates and sugars. They have added sugars, because there's a really, and we'll get more into this later, but real quick, there's a big difference between naturally occurring sugars and the added sugars in your foods.
Those added sugars. Yeah, I'm so glad they're doing that, though.
Yeah.
That's so helpful. And like, what I get confused about is like, I saw something, I think it was like Adam Ruins Everything, like some silly TV show, but that they, like you said, that they don't know if it's true. Like, it's like a 20% error in that. And like, people that are counting their calories, like, how would you know, like, if that's right? Like, I don't know. To me, I don't even count calories anymore. I did that for a little bit, and it triggered like my eating disorder, and like, I don't recommend it for people, but like, would you? Like, no,
I really would not recommend counting calories. It's for a number of reasons. Like, yes, one, not an accurate way to measure the nutrients that you're putting into your body. When you're assigning your meals like a number, it can be detrimental to what we call your intuitive eater and your hunger and fullness signals, and that can lead to yo-yo dieting. So it kind of comes full circle.
That's
so I just,
true.
Plain and simple, I really don't recommend calorie counting. If you're going to count anything, make it macros, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit as well.
And vegetables too. Like, I don't think it's necessary to like be like, I can only have 300 calories of this and this and this and this. Like, I think it's just like, eat your vegetables, eat some protein, eat like for your body too. I don't think there's anything out there like that has a nutrition label that like you should really care about. Like, a lot of stuff, like if you're reading the back of a box of macaroni and cheese, like, this doesn't really matter. Just have a little bit of macaroni and cheese because you want it. So hopefully that makes sense to all of you. Let's move on to our second question, and we're still in the what topics of nutrition confuse you, and do carbs really play a factor in nutrition?
Yes. Carbohydrates are one of the 4 macronutrients. They're very, very important for your ability to thrive and function, and for your brain to work, pretty much, plain and simple. Carbohydrates are our body's quickest source of energy, so depriving yourself of them can be pretty detrimental just in everyday life. Carbohydrates are our body's quickest source of energy, so depriving yourself of them can be pretty detrimental just in everyday life. You'll find you're slower, you're more lethargic, you have trouble staying focused, you also have a hard time with any kind of endurance or stamina. It's just a really important nutrient, to the point that our body will even store carbohydrates for later, and that's what glycogen stores are, and we'll use when usually performing some kind of endurance exercise. So that's why runners will carbo load and have glycogen stores for later.
Yeah, I was on a swim team most of my life, and it was always like spaghetti night, like before like a big swim meet, and like they just forced that down us. And I think could have been some balance with that, but like it definitely helps. Like, imagine if I went to the Junior Olympics. Like, imagine if I didn't have any carbs from that. Like, I would have performed so different. And like, I feel like I've tried different stuff, like low carb and everything, and like what works for me is around like 80-ish grams, but like I don't count those anymore. I just kind of go based off of what I feel. And like, when I was sick, I didn't have as many carbs as, say, if I was going to be working out or like filming like a video and like doing crazy lifting or something, you know? So I feel like, again, that goes back to intuitive eating.
Yeah, it really does all circle back to intuitive eating, and we'll get more into that, but I'm excited too.
The next one, our last one on this topic, is macros. I have no idea where to even begin with that.
Thank you for that question. That's actually like a perfect segue. So macronutrients, the idea behind that is you count 3 different macronutrients: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And the idea is for different body types, different body compositions, different activity levels, we need different amounts of each of those and kind of this ideal ratio to reach a certain goal. And it can be beneficial in some ways, as some people find they feel their best when they're counting their macronutrients and they're maintaining a specific ratio. Some people just need a little more guidance with that. For people who've experienced any kind of disordered eating or disordered relationships with food, it can be kind of detrimental because you focus so heavily on that ratio, and it takes a lot of time and energy to count those out and weigh out everything you eat and, calculate that ratio.
And when you're a perfectionist, like, say I'm off by like 1 gram and I like feel guilty, and like, your girl doesn't need that added stress in her life. Like, to me, it's not my thing, but I could see how it can be beneficial to other people.
Yeah, so like a lot of professional athletes will use things like counting macronutrients. I will say that if that is your jam, make sure that you're not too rigid with it, because it really is one of those things where foods are so complicated, our bodies are so complicated that it's impossible to strike the same ratio every single day. That's just not going to happen. So what you have to do is recognize that it's just going to fall in line and truly just use them as a guideline. You can't use them like gram for gram. It really is a range.
And I think it's like a good reminder too, like the more you're aware of, like, I know this food is a protein, I know this food is a carb, like you can kind of just eyeball it, in my opinion. And I, like, to me, that's what I do. I know I want like half my plate vegetables, and that's just like, I don't know if that's habit from my eating disorder treatment center or if that's just something I picked up, but like I like to have the vegetables on the side and like my protein, and just really, like, if I'm feeling like I want some more sweet potatoes, like I'm gonna have some more sweet potatoes and like not punish myself, because so many people message me of just like, I had chips last night and I feel really bad, and it's just like, I want to help you get out of that mindset, but I can't help you, you have to help yourself, sort of thing, and I know you deal with people with eating disorders, and it's like, you kind of just want to be like, it's okay, all the time, but there's so much more to it. So let's, is there anything else you want to say about macros, or?
We'll get more into it, but really just intuitive eating is such an important component, and if anything, I would use your macronutrients to try to redevelop your intuitive eating. So using those ranges to kind of figure out, okay, what should be making me full and satisfied.
That leads into our third point of this video, which is another question I asked over on Instagram, in what foods are bad foods in your opinion? And our first question off of that is foods high in saturated fats that are also processed.
So really quick, I will say that good foods, bad foods is sometimes a detrimental mindset to have. Like, of course, there are going to be foods that make you feel better and foods that make you feel worse, and that varies from person to person. But saying that a cake equals bad equals you are bad for eating it is probably not the healthiest way to live. You're allowed to eat a piece of cake when you're at a birthday party. That's normal.
And this was kind of like a trick question that I put out there because I really wanted her to stress the point of, like, it's okay to have a slice of cake. It's okay to have fats. It's okay. So let's get more into fats.
Yeah, so fats. There's only really 2 types of fats that anyone should ever have to be worried about. Back in the day, people thought that fats made you fat. That's not true. There is a type of fat called trans fats. The FDA has banned trans fats because it's been so correlated to increasing risk of cardiovascular disease, because it raises something called LDL cholesterol, which is considered bad cholesterol. It's low density lipoprotein, and it's very correlated to heart disease. The other fat that people tend to worry about, that there's a lot of debate over, and it goes both ways, is saturated fats. And the reason people are worried about that is because saturated fats also raise LDL levels, or low density lipoproteins, but they also raise HDL levels, high density lipoproteins, which are good. But for example, coconut oil has a lot of saturated fat in it, but that's not necessarily bad for you. So a good way to tell things that are hard at room temperature usually have a good amount of saturated fat, but they're not going to kill you. Again, it goes back to that thing where we crave these very specific, simple answers, but it's usually so much more complicated than that. So unless your doctor is telling you to avoid saturated fats, there's really no reason for you to eliminate all butter or coconut oil from your diet. You really don't need to.
Yeah.
It's a basic cooking need.
What about sugar? That's our next question.
Sugar. I love talking about sugar.
I'm excited. Let's get buckled in and grab my water.
So with sugar, there's a big difference between added sugar and sugar that's naturally occurring. Let me just say, you will never eat anything in your life that does not have some kind of sugar in it. Sugars are naturally occurring in every single thing we eat. You can't help it. So with sugar in fruits, that's not something people need to worry about. That sugar is co-occurring with things like fiber and cellulose and things that our body uses to absorb the other nutrients in the fruits. It's just not something you need to worry about. The sugars that are added to any kind of food that you're eating, sugar always comes from plants. It comes from sugar cane or sugar beets. There's no way to eat it not coming from a plant. So when we say it's processed, yes, it's processed, but it's also plant-based. So
yeah,
just remember that when you start to get scared of sugar as a chemical or start to see it that way, it really isn't this demon child that you need to run from.
I mean, there's processed sugar,
yes,
right? And then like I enjoy like monk fruit. Like I love monk fruit sugar, and like to me like that doesn't affect my body compared to like other, like, I don't know, they're not fake sugars, but they are fake sugars. Like in some
like artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, like those affect my body more than like monk fruit, and I found like monk fruit works for me, and I don't consider it a bad food.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about monk fruit. I do know that it's a great sweetener. I've had it before and I really enjoy it. I don't know too much about its contents. So the different kinds of sugar, there's sucrose, sucrase, and fructose and glucose. And glucose and fructose make up of most of what we eat. So like honey, for example, is I believe 50% glucose, 50% fructose. And fructose is the thing that our body has a hard time digesting. Usually our liver has to do a lot of work to be able to break it down. And so that's what people usually tend to be scared of when we talk about sugar. But what's worse, I would argue, is artificial sweeteners. And that's because when we eat artificial sweeteners, most of them are so highly processed and chemically engineered that it literally tricks our brain into thinking we're consuming sugar. And our receptors in our brain usually get ready to receive a bunch of oxytocin, and it never comes. And so that can leave us feeling even more unsatiated than we would otherwise if we did consume actual sugar.
Okay, so you're natural sugar over artificial sweeteners. And I feel like that's the same with like people that drink like soda. And so like having diet soda is like my grandma, hi, I love you grandma, you the best, but she drinks a lot of diet soda. And I feel like if she were just to have like one soda, like she wouldn't have to drink like 8 diet sodas.
That's probably true.
You know? Like it's not the same satisfaction.
Yeah, balance, variety, and moderation. I mean, like if soda makes you feel satisfied, drink the freaking soda. I wouldn't recommend drinking 8 a day.
Yeah.
But if you're drinking like 1 to 2 a week, there's really nothing wrong with that, and it definitely beats consuming a bunch of artificial sweeteners.
It's all about balance, okay? Okay. All right, let's actually get into our 4th part of this video. We're almost done. We have 5 questions. We're on number 4, and that is, what's the biggest weight loss trend you've seen? In the first one we're going to talk about, I bet you can guess it.
Keto diet?
The keto diet. Let's get into it. Rant, girl, rant!
So I get a lot of questions about the keto diet. Let me start off by saying it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. If it works for you, if your physician is monitoring you doing it, if you've been told you should be on it by a health professional, go for it. My thing with the keto diet is it cuts out carbohydrates, at least for the most part. And like I said earlier, carbohydrates are essential. It is our body's quickest source of energy. We need them to survive. So calling carbs the demon is not really going to do you or your body any good. And I've also seen a lot of the people who are interested in doing the ketogenic diet are also people who are really active, because they're people who, you know, want to feel as healthy and mobile for as long as possible and feel as happy as possible. Cutting your carbohydrate intake is not going to allow you to perform any kind of exercise at your maximum capacity. It's going to diminish it significantly, and you're going to find that your endurance is not where it usually is.
And I mean, based off of that too, like, I see there's not enough information out there that I see that to do keto correctly. And like, I see pictures, I'm not gonna name any names, but like people post like beef jerky and diet soda, and they're like 0 carbs, like, what up, like no carbs, like best snack ever. And to me it's like, you're not getting a variety of food. Like, they can't have bananas, but they'll eat beef jerky and diet soda. So like, I just hate it.
That's
so
where the
much.
balance comes in, and that's where like intuition comes in too.
Yeah.
Like things like the ketogenic diet, again, if someone told you to do it and you're doing it in a safe way, I'm not here to judge, go for it. However, it tends to encourage you to lean away from your intuitive eating and away from your cravings, and our body's best resource for figuring out what we need in a certain moment is our cravings. So saying, okay, I'm going to ignore my cravings to eat a banana and I'm going to go drink a diet soda instead is probably not the best choice.
So I have been drinking celery juice in the morning to help with my stomach issues. I've had a lot of like different study or like testing done, and I have food sensitivities, and like celery juice has made it so I'm not as gassy, and it like de-bloats me, you know, and like has cleared up my acne a little bit. I don't know if it's actually been doing that. But I like celery juice just as an added thing in the morning. I don't drink it as like a meal replacement. Like, I don't do juice every single day. Like, I like celery juice just for like the first thing in the morning, and then I'll have breakfast and lunch and a snack and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I can't. I mean, if it's working for you, it's working for you. And that's my biggest thing. Like, if something is working for you, don't stop doing it on my account. As long as you're doing it in a safe as long as you're doing it in a safe, intentional way that doesn't represent any kind of disordered relationship with food, go for it. With juicing, the one thing I will caution people about is a lot of people have used it as a way to detox. And the thing is, with detox diets, our liver and our kidneys do that enough already.
Yes, go ahead.
I think we're all on the same page about that at this point, but I still see a lot of stuff out there on detox diets, and our bodies are really good at doing that on our own. If they weren't, we wouldn't pee. So with juicing, whenever you juice any kind of vegetable, you're taking out all of the fiber from the vegetable. You can even see that in the rotator, like whenever you clean it, that's all fiber that would really benefit you if you did consume. So I usually push smoothies. Of course, if celery juice is something you enjoy in the morning and it's making you feel good and it's more palatable, by all means, go for it. But that's my biggest thing, is don't use it as a weight loss trick, because to do that, you'd have to do like a detox thing, and detox things are kind of BS because our bodies do that for us.
They do. Let's actually move on to the next part, and we have one more thing actually, if that's okay. We have intermittent fasting, and that is off of the biggest weight loss trends. Just a few little sentences about that.
Yeah, so intermittent fasting is another thing I get a lot of questions about. Again, if a physician has recommended you do it, or you're working with a dietitian, or you're an athlete, I mean, go for it as long as you're doing it in a safe way. A lot of the information that's given to the public about intermittent fasting is not usually scientifically backed. It's usually based on one person's experience, and it's usually about weight loss. And I mean, if you're cutting out a meal or you're pushing your meals to later in the day, you're probably going to eat less. You're probably going to lose weight. That's pretty simple.
Or it could, like, to me, it would be I would binge more at the end of the day.
That too.
That's just my experience, though. I was like, I'm not going to eat till noon, and then like lunch comes and I have 1,000 calories and I feel guilty, and then it gets all,
and it's this never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, I'm a big advocate for intuitive eating. Even if you're an athlete, I think it's a great way to give your body what you need, especially if we're exercising. Our bodies are really good at telling us exactly what we need.
Definitely. Let's go into our last part, and our last question that I asked over on Instagram is, any questions for you? So these are just some random questions that if it didn't fit in the category, we are going to answer them, or you're going to answer them now. So what are small, healthier substitutions, like small changes to start with?
So to start off with, I really encourage people to try to get back into the habit of intuitive eating and mindful eating. And so eating things that you know will make you feel satiated. So like a lot of fruits and veggies, especially when they're raw, they have a lot of cellulose, so that means our body can't digest them. So our stomachs will expand and we'll feel more satiated. So if that works for you, that's a great way to feel full. For me, I really like a strawberry feta salad with some chicken or something, super yummy. Other ways to kind of practice intuitive eating is eating your normal lunches, and eating with someone else or not in front of the TV, and kind of staying really present within your body and recognizing when you feel hungry and honoring that, and recognizing when you feel full and honoring that. So eating when you're hungry, finishing when you're full. It's really hard to get into, especially in a society that pushes like eating in front of the TV, or just completely detaching from your food altogether, or not eating at all. So it's really, really
eating in the car, like even with like fast food places, like it's not like you're gonna be paying attention to what you're eating. You're just gonna keep grabbing those fries over and over and over again. And like to me, like I used to have the TV on and I could like just keep eating and eating because I wasn't listening to my body. Like I just wanted something in my mouth. I know it sounds bad, but like really paying attention is something I learned in recovery when I was an inpatient. Like really focusing on your foods, focusing on the color, the taste, like how it feels in your mouth, everything, and like drinking water while eating as well. Like I was always told not to. Like my mom always told me like, no, eat your food and then you can have like water. And like I don't know where she heard that from, but like
probably
I learned
a fad diet.
Probably a fad diet, but like now I know like it's okay to like take a sip and like enjoy it, and you don't have to be like hunched over, like actually like sit up and like enjoy your food.
Food can be a really joyous thing when we eliminate all the expectations that come with it and that get placed upon us. It can really be enjoyable and can really make you feel satisfied and just ready to conquer the rest of your day, and eliminates all of that guilt. I really recommend anyone who's interested looking up the 9 principles of intuitive eating. There's some really helpful tips and advice on there as well.
Awesome. And then real quick, I know we've been rambling on, but I just have one more question from one of our viewers, and that is recommendations for back to basic weight loss.
So I would say if weight loss is something that you're looking for, the first thing I recommend doing is asking yourself why. So what's the motivation there? Are you doing it because you are trying to achieve some kind of athletic goal, like run a half marathon? Are you doing it because you believe that it will make you feel happier, which I know you've covered a lot?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Been there, done that. Like I was the most insecure of my life when I was the skinniest. And like it just doesn't correlate. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're totally fine. It really isn't an end all be all. Like once you lose a certain amount of weight, you won't magically feel happier. So I would really first things first, ask yourself why you're doing it. I think second step is to consult either a dietitian or your doctor to make sure that it's a safe option for you. And then making sure that you're allowing yourself to still eat the things that you enjoy, like we were just talking about. I mean, eating is such a joyous thing. You don't want to cut that out of your life. You'll be miserable.
And then, but also with that, not putting joy just in food too. Like family events, like I hate how everything's surrounded by food. And I don't know if that's just because of passive eating disorders, but like I don't know why food has to create so much joy. I think like for me, how I get through all of this is just like, this is the stuff that fuels me, and I enjoy that it makes me feel good. And that's where I'm at in like my recovery journey and stuff, and that's what I like to think about. So
I love that. Food is fuel and it's also fun, and putting too much weight on either of those can be detrimental. So just like we were talking about, like balance really truly is everything. So finding what works for you is a constant and an exciting thing, and I encourage everybody to continue to do that.
Yeah. And I appreciate everyone that watched this video. If you made it to the end, what emoji should they leave?
Ice cream cone.
I appreciate you again so much for watching, and thank you for being on my channel. It makes me so happy. So if you want to check her out, of course you do, go follow her over on Instagram. Her page will be right here and linked down below. Is there any last words you want to say?
Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate all of your patience and hearing my rants about intuitive eating, and good luck to all of you, and thank you so much.
Awesome. I will see you next week at 3 o'clock. Bye.